It's exactly 49 minutes past the hour of 7. My name is Shivan, and the conversation in regard to the early closure of schools continues here on the Twitter Jabs. And joining me this morning is none other than Miss Namukwaya Aisha, and she is the headmistress of Lowell Girls School. Good morning, madam, and thank you so much for joining us this morning on Sunrise at Sea.
Good morning, Shivan, and nice to meet you.
Absolutely, nice to meet you too. Well, I am also joined by Mr. Hassadu Chirabira, and he is the National Chairperson of the National Private Educational Institutions Association. Good morning, sir, and thank you so much for joining us this morning on Sunrise at Sea together with Madam Aisha.
Thank you. Good morning, and good morning, viewers. Thank you, CTV, for being lovers of education.
Absolutely. Education is, I mean, any successful nation is definitely built on education. As a country without educated citizens cannot go anywhere. So it's very important that education is part and parcel of the conversations that we have every morning. Well, it also should be noted that we did contact the Ministry of Education and Sports. In particular, we did contact the spokesperson, that is Mr. Dennis Mugimba, the Ministry of Education. But they did highlight and said, as of now, the Ministry of Education has not put forth an initiative in regard to the early closure of schools, and they expect that schools will close on the 12th of August. That is the stand of the Ministry of Education. So today we are talking about the early closure of schools. Of course, this is in regard to the fact that we are experiencing an economic crisis with skyrocketing commodity prices that are going over the roof. We have maize flour, which is going over the roof. We have posho, which is literally served in almost all schools, going over the roof. Notwithstanding the fact that fuel prices, depending on where you get your fuel from, is also way above. So I'll start with you, Madam Aisha. What is the situation like in Lowell Girls School?
Thank you so much, Madam Shivan, and good morning, dear viewers. As per Lowell Girls, we thank God. Alhamdulillah. We are pushing, and the girls are very happy. So far, so good. But we have shortages, of course. And then we can't compromise quality. So it therefore means that there are some things that the school have to undergo, to forego, so that we see that we make up. We see that we get up to the end of the term. So it means we have to prioritize now, because the term began very well. Yes, and we thought even the prices will go even lower than what, because the season was bumper and we are going to harvest too much maize, but then it is the other way around. And our dear viewers, even in the middle of the term, apart from these rising prices, we had an outbreak of serious cough and malaria and typhoid, so there's too much costs as far as drugs were concerned. So this term has been really hit by so many things. But at least as Lowell Girls, we've tried to push, and the girls are healthy.
Okay, so in regard to the early closure of schools, as the headmistress of Lowell Girls, are you also planning to close the school early prior than the set date of 12th August?
1 week earlier.
Okay.
1 week earlier, at least for us, we are pushing, and we have pushed, and I'm very sure we shall push up to that date, at least 6th August. Because now this thing came in the middle of the term. You couldn't tell the parents that you are increasing fees, that please add us some 40,000, you know. Yeah, so we had to look here and there. We have to forego other things to see that we make up, so that we maintain quality, so that at least the students are going to learn. And Madam Shivan, you will know that we still have the COVID effects, the 2 terms. We are trying to cover up. And now we are closing earlier. So it means there is some content that will not be covered, definitely, by other schools. So we are trying to see how we can push and cover up the 2 terms that we missed during COVID. And now this is another calamity. Are we going for another lockdown? So are we sure all students are going to come back? So we are sending them home, but what is at home? Will they come back next time? Is it another lockdown? Okay, so all those questions are posed there. And in whatever situation, as Lowell Girls, remember they are girls, they become vulnerable. It triples down to a girl child. Yes, so she'll not get enough of that she wants. Maybe the utilities, the personal effects will not be enough because even the parents, all the businesses are down. So it doesn't end at closure of schools early, but what next?
Yes.
Yeah, we go an extra mile to think outside the box. What next?
Because sending them home might not be the best option.
It's
Looking
not
at
the
the fact
best
that the rising
really.
cost of living is not just affecting
Yes.
people in school, but it's also affecting parents and guardians. Mr. Hassad, you are the national chairperson of the National Private Educational Institutions Association. What are private schools saying in regard to the early closure of schools, of course, because of the rising cost of living?
Thank you, Shivan. The situation is very challenging. You know, we have been grappling with the COVID in schools. From COVID, the economic crisis shrinks in, and in the midst of that, schools are trying to cover up with the syllabus and bridge up the deficiencies that were created by COVID. It is ideally challenging, and we see schools being overwhelmed. In the midst of that, we have tried to take steps to see what we can do with the situation. And we think if schools cannot manage to sustain students at the centers, it is imperative that we accept that they have to get the holidays before the time gazetted by the Minister of Education.
But is it fair to the learners who have not been studying for almost a period of 2 years, and the parents and guardians who have already paid their school fees of the children to study full term?
It is not fair at all, but which fairity are we talking about? Because we are talking about life, we are talking about health, we are talking about ability to sustain the students within the schools. In the event that a school cannot manage to sustain students in terms of feeding, then the results are more catastrophic, because you will see strikes because of poor feeding. You will see so many challenges. Ill health because of poor feeding, which is not good. You saw what happened in Hoima, Mandera. Students are rioting. They are burning school property of years back. All of that is not good. In the event that a school cannot manage to sustain the students and cannot call for parents' meeting to discuss increment in the fees, we are remaining with only 3 weeks. And in this second week, if some schools, ideally it wouldn't be nice, but because some schools are incapacitated, the budgets are overwhelmed, we cannot say that let students stay at school and they die of hunger. It's better they go home, then we sit and rethink and see the way forward. We are trying to reach out to the Minister of Education. As an association, we have talked to the Grain Council to see what they can do for us as of the last week. We have talked with the Uganda Manufacturers Association to see what can be done, but we are not hearing from government.
So Ministry of Education together with the Uganda Manufacturers Association has not given you any feedback in regard to your request?
There is no feedback. This is a private interaction, discussion with the Uganda Manufacturers Association to see what we can do, because the situation seems to be really very, very calamitous, and it is causing a grim state as far as schools are concerned. How do we get rid of this situation come next term? Because even next term is not far. We are seeing no change in the situation. We expected a change, but as we are moving towards the end of the term, we see the prices are even increasing. And you know, how do we handle this? The ministry is silent about this, telling schools not to close at the time when we are only remaining with the almost 2 weeks. We don't see it working out well. For the schools that are okay, like my sister's school, Namukwaya, you know she's Namukwaya Muchirabira. So they can push on if their budgets are not overwhelmed. But to those that are overwhelmed, we think there must be a solution. Instead of telling schools not to close, it is long overdue. Ministry should come out with viable solutions. And what are those solutions? We are waiting. We as an association, we have taken a step. Of the last 2 weeks I have been moving You go to Arua and see what is happening. And those people are very good at producing maize. You go and see. I was in Arua talking to school directors, analyzing the situation. We were in Bushenyi since last week. I came back actually on Saturday. All these ginger, we have been moving, talking to directors of school. There are many challenges in private education institutions, and then the crisis of this, what we are seeing, the prices escalating, is a bigger challenge now, and it is a threat to the property of the school. So we think it is time that also the ministry comes up with a solution to the challenge, because keeping quiet cannot make it good. We have moved to that. Government needs to look at how to deal with the meters. Government needs to look at how to deal with electricity. Government, there are a lot of things we need to think about to see how we can contain the situation before we move to the next term.
Okay. So Madam Aisha, have you in any way tried to interact with the Ministry of Education and Sports?
Yes, thank you for that question. We are always waiting for their communication. But what I can say, Madam, as the government, we need to have a stabilization fund. Usually, when these problems come, like 1 month down the road, 2 weeks, already we are hit hardly. So it means these producers, they need to have some funds that can back them up so that the prices don't hike that much. As compared to the countries just neighboring us, the situation is not as worse as ours. And they import our food. We export to them, that is no problem. But then we are more hit, and we are the producers. And the other shall like to say, these problems that are hitting the schools and the government at large, some are external and others are internal. Like externally, you can't say we are stopping the Ukraine war, because that's where we are getting most of the palm oil, and the cost of the cooking oil is very, very high. And at schools we fly, we use wheat flour, they eat mandazi bread, so you find that we are hit strongly. So these external factors, sometimes there is nothing much to do. But what is the Ministry of Disaster Preparedness doing? How are we prepared? Your condition, when the problem comes, the way it affects you depends on the way you have been before that problem come. Have we been stable? What has been happening here? We are hit with COVID so much.
So are you asking that government should be in a position to donate food to schools during this trying time?
Yes, if we have the buffers, they can come and beef up. Yes, because these are children. The World Bank noted that the development of any nation cannot be greater than the education of its people. But our education is compromised for years now. We are trying to pull up, and then this is another calamity. We are cutting short the term. And then it also might happen for third term. We don't know, because I don't see much hope that things are getting better tomorrow or the other day. So it means we're also going into third term with the same problem. We are carrying the same baggage to third term. So please, we like maybe the government to have those strategies that can really come as interventions, early interventions, to see that our education system is not compromised, really.
Let's look at this aspect. And you are a headmistress of a purely girls' school.
Yes.
Sending back children home early, of course, it's understandable. Schools, the feeding costs and, the implementation costs have gone beyond what they had actually anticipated. Yeah. But we are sending back students home, like I mentioned earlier, also where parents are crying because of the rising cost of living. And girls, most especially, are always prone to having to go out of their way, or parents even either pushing them into early marriages as a means of getting money, or even having them to fend for their lives, not forgetting even the boy child. So aren't we already even creating a problem within a problem? One, children have not been in school. Two, we are sending them back home early during an economic crisis. Don't you think some parents are going to force children to take on child labor as a means to an end? And I'll pose this to you, Mr. Hassad.
It is challenging because we have been talking about back to school campaign and changing the mindset of parents. It has taken us a while to convince some students back to school and to inform parents that we need to sit and talk to keep the students,
Okay.
the children in schools. However, as I said, unless there is intervention of government and there is clear understanding of the better approaches we can take as schools, there is no way a private school can sustain students at school without money from the parents, because a private school entirely depends on the parent. There is no way you separate these two. So wherever we are challenged, we have to invite the parents meeting and discuss. But this is coming at a time almost towards the end, and it is not prudent to invite parents and talk about this. And the time we have now is to assess the situation, whether it informs a parents meeting before we reopen, to discuss now the way forward. We see the challenge of sending back students to school. It is really, keeping students at home is very dangerous, because parents are not there. They have to go to work. They leave for them home.
Exactly.
They start moving everywhere, what and what. But we have to abide, because when bad times come, they don't dictate. We have to stand the test of the time. We have gone through a lot. I think we shall also manage to go through this, but with the proper plans.
Okay.
My sister is bringing out a very good idea. Disaster preparedness. The office of the Prime Minister is dealing with what? People who are challenged, not only in flooded areas and war areas and refugee camps, but schools are now...
This is a situation that needs the Ministry of for Disaster
Yes, to
Preparedness.
come in. It is long overdue. Right away from the onset of COVID, we have not seen anything from government, from all the lobbies we have made as private education institutions. Nothing has come on board. And even now, because we are saying government must have a crisis management system or a policy in place. We don't have a policy as far as education is concerned. You know, the events, the way they are unfolding, must inform the government on how prepared we must be for times of crisis. Because COVID alone has proved the government could not do anything, even if the issue was about health. Now we are coming to economic crisis, which bites deep into the pockets of parents who are already in a poor state. So what do we do as schools that depend on parents? Because even the little we are requesting cannot be given. Even the fees as we talk now, many parents have not completed. Others are in halves, because the issue was bring back the students, bring back the children.
So that they can learn.
They can learn. We discuss so that they come back to school. Now, as we are doing that, all this is happening. We are asking even for what they must pay. Some cannot afford to fulfill it. Then how do you prolong the term? That's why we are saying disaster preparedness should come in.
Come into the picture.
Yes. Brain Council is willing to sit with us, supply us, and do what? The buffers she's talking about, government is prepared, has stores. When do the stores work for schools? We can even purchase at subsidized prices, not free. We are not saying they should give us free. We can purchase at subsidized, but imagine 50 kilograms we are purchasing at 30,000, 50,000, now to be at 150,000. 100 kilograms of flour, maize flour, posho, it is at 300. A jerrycan of cooking oil, which was at 80,000, it is now at 180. Soap used in the schools to maintain standards. Now, how do you manage this? And this does not only pull only the entire children and but also the staff.
The staff as well.
As well. You have to increase the salaries in the midst of the challenge.
To be able to, they need to balance the cost of living,
Cost of living
with what you're bringing home.
Exactly.
So in the same spirit, let's also not neglect the fact that some government schools are just recovering from strikes where teachers had put down their tools. Yeah. So what will happen to the second term syllabus now that schools are closing early? What is the implication of that?
I think the issue is about planning. It is about planning. And that's why we, as the association NAPEA, We have put government on pressure. In fact, we are meeting the commissioner in charge of planning in the Ministry of Education, because all the challenges we are grappling with in the education sector are about poor planning. Go to the curriculum, go to the teachers, thinking these ones are better than the other, this one is better, as if the whole country is led by scientists. They are important. But legislature, executive, judiciary, they are not led by scientists. These are problems created by government because of poor planning, causing excitement in the sector. Now, if it is that, then the government must sit down and plan well, think well, prioritize. There's no prioritizing in the government. Things come overnight and they happen. And education ought to be something that must be planned because it is timed. That's why we are now talking about education, because we know we must be in school for 3 months, 2 weeks. If we are there 3 months, 2 weeks, if it is less by that, it has a far-reaching effect to the coverage, to the society, to the parents' plan, to a lot of things rotate on schools. Even funerals cannot be conducted without planning for students in schools. So a lot of things rotate on that. Without prior proper planning, then we are planning to fail the sector, which is already challenged with so many issues. Recently, I was invited by Professor Mugaga at Makerere. I was challenged to discuss the fate of education in Uganda, the decline of education. Who is at the forefront of this? It is Kenya. How do you come to discuss how the education system in Uganda is declining? You see, now Uganda cannot become a laughing stock because of poor planning. We, as the actors, we have to rise up. We have
rise up to the occasion.
Yes, and harmonize these challenges. Ministry should rise up. The commissioners, the directors, the education officers, what are they doing in offices? Up to now, we have not had a voice apart from telling private schools, don't increase fees. Don't, who set the fees you are talking about that must not be increased? Procedures are there. Talk about taxes. Tell them not to charge. Talk about fixed cost. Talk about electricity. Talk about water. Talk about the forces of demand and supply, which are challenging us.
You do have a valid point, and I understand where you're coming from, because even while government is coming out to say private schools do not increase fees, it's a trickle-down effect. If the cost of living has gone high, private schools definitely, in one way or the other, will have to increase fees to meet the rising cost of living. But I'll pose this to you, Madam Aisha, in regard to still schools wanting to close early. What does this mean, especially for the fact that the syllabus, already, like I mentioned earlier, some government schools have been on strike. That means some students have actually just resumed. And yet again, schools are planning to close early, minus the syllabus being completed. So what does this mean? What happens to the second term syllabus now that schools are closing early?
Yeah, thank you for that question. It is evident. It is evident that some content will not be covered. But then we need to find a way forward as teachers. We must have holiday packages for these girls, for these children. Maybe we think, and we are requesting the parents to try and encourage them to read.
Because that is what I was going to say. You might go ahead and give holiday packages in a way to catch up for what they have missed. But what guarantee do you have that these children will actually do it and read?
So it affects quality. It affects quality. By all means, our quality is compromised as far as content and curriculum coverage is concerned. I will appreciate the government a bit for this new curriculum. It is very, very expensive, but very good because it has continuous assessments. It doesn't wait for the end of term exams, like every time you are assessing those activities of integration. If we had that before, we wouldn't be worried. But then, most of the schools, they're aiming at marks scoring, passing exams. So you find that the other content is not mind about. What is the net take home? What are these people getting? And what is the practicability of whatever they are learning? Is it relevant with the the challenges of the world today? You find that it's not correspondent.
Okay.
So we thank very much the new curriculum, at least is trying to bring out that one, integrating what we study with our environment. But now, the quality of education is compromised. There's no question about that. This term has been hit by many things, as you mentioned. The strikes, the diseases, now the costs, and even the teachers are not happy because at home the demand is too much and the salary has not increased. So all that affects especially the girl child. Are they going to come back to school? I'm worried about that. If the parent doesn't have, definitely we have to increase fees. But even minus increasing, they have not even paid this. The one that we had.
They have not paid the arrears.
They have not paid the arrears. Even for first term. Then to second term. Then how about third term? So in order to operate, we shall have to increase fees. But then relatively, because we are also human beings, we understand. So also schools should find other sources of income apart from school fees.
Okay.
We encourage schools there. They can have very big gardens of maybe maize, of beans, so that they can subsidize. These days, if schools are going to depend on only school fees, we cannot manage.
Or vertically, instead of giving children punishment such as scrubbing the toilets at school, maybe
they go to the garden.
Yes, they could go to the garden and actually dig their own food that they're going to eat. Yes. But among the tweets, and of course we posted this question on our social media while asking people what they think about the early closure of schools. And some of the tweets that we got, and this one actually came in from Ndiabawe Myers, and he said, online learning will gradually become the best option. And I'll pose this first to you, Madam Aisha.
Yes,
do you think that the way we are going, online learning is the way to get, notwithstanding and not forgetting the fact that if you looked at the stats, online learning did not work in COVID-19, because what guarantee do you have that a child can afford internet, can afford a smartphone, can afford a laptop? So is online learning the best option in this case?
It's not the best option because we are not prepared for it. If this online learning comes, like as a procedure, slowly, we train the teachers, the mindset of the pupils is set, but sometimes it just comes abruptly. Now there is lockdown, there is this problem, now online learning. Minus preparing even the parents. That mindset, the psychological setup, is not done very well. Personally, I did a research at Masters, e-learning in distance education. And the case study was Uganda itself, long ago, 2005. And that's because we don't put these researches in action. We just make research and they are just kept in archives. Otherwise, we would be having a very good system of e-learning. From 2005 up to now, there are many years. Yes. So this e-learning cannot, it will create inequalities between learners. My people in rural cannot. I remember during the lockdown, I tried to bring the TV to see whether these people can learn. They are just excited, These village boys, they were at home. They just looked at the TV. They are just very happy. They are dancing. It cannot, really, because of the mindset today. It can work for a certain class of people, very few. And these people don't concentrate much. As he's still on the phone, there is some advert that will come. And we are facing those problems in school today. These people who got addicted to phones during the lockdown, it is a very big problem now in schools. That is a discussion of another day.
Yes.
But then e-learning, I don't think it is a best alternative right now because it is abrupt. If it is a process by process, procedure by procedure, so it works. Because in other countries, maybe the developed one, it is working. But our financial, can you afford data? Even airtime, we cannot. Our grandparents, people in the villages, they have the phone, but no airtime. No even battery for 2 days. They are not charging. Can we provide the solar to everybody, to every household? No, we are not there as the government.
Okay, so Mr. Hassado, still in the same spirit, do you think online learning is the way to go, and is it practical?
I think the world is changing. We need to embrace the new innovations to avoid being a backward economy. But the issue of digital transformation is something that shouldn't come as a result of the challenge of COVID. COVID is only opening our eyes towards what is right now. But we are not ready. We are not ready. If we talk about digital learning, content, equipments, where are they? Network, where are they? They are not there. Instructors, where are they? She knows in secondary we have issues of teacher instructors. Instructors who are professional teachers to deal with ICT in schools. We end up getting sometimes people, who have done ICT, but that they are not in that orientation of a teacher. We are not totally prepared for it. But I think it is time that government prioritize it. Because when you talk of prioritizing, education, that means increase the budget for education. Increasing the budget for education means go digital. Human resource, put up better, orient them, direct them into the right subjects and towards education. Where is the human resource? Where is the digital we are talking about? Finance it. How much, how many schools can manage to buy computers? How many homes can manage to buy laptops and iPads for students and for learners? This is very challenging, but it is the way to go. We need to start the journey now. After COVID, we need to plan, replan. That's why we are saying that department of planning in the ministry is very key. She's talking about a new curriculum, which is very nice. Yes, but now when you talk of a curriculum coming in place at a time when students are in class, the teachers go for workshops without grasping even what they are going to deliberate on, they come back to the students in class, then what do you expect? What kind of results do you expect? It is very, very challenging, and that's why the quality is slowly melting. The quality of education is slowly melting down because of those challenges that are socketing within what would be right, but brought at a wrong time.
Okay. So agreed that maybe early closure of schools might be the way to go. But don't you think that will create an education imbalance, being that government schools are closing on the 12th of August and private schools intend to close earlier than that?
The moment government take education to be privately owned, then we miss the point. The government, much as it privatized, liberalized education, but schools remain to be of a public character, under the control of government. Control in terms of curriculum, control in terms of exams, UNEB and etc. Now, when it comes to issues that impede on syllabus coverage, the curriculum, we do see government coming up with viable solutions to ensure that curriculum is completed. But government looks at itself and its own, does not look at private sector. And this is causing a big challenge. That's why we tell them, when it comes to fees, then don't look at us. Because even in other aspects, you don't look at us. Teachers in government schools were paid. Teachers in private were not paid. Teachers in government schools are paid 4 million. In private, they are paid according to experience and capacity. You see, now this dichotomy created is not fair to education. And if we want to talk about education in Uganda in terms of quality, you cannot leave out private. Because quality is private. Private means quality. Go to PLE, go to senior 4, go to senior 6. Who leads in equality? That means if you don't look after private schools in terms of need, if you are not a good friend, then you'll see how hard hit the quality of education is going to be in the coming 5, 6, 10 years. So we think government should sit down and understand that education is education for all. So these are kids, these are not kids. Uganda is our father, okay? It's, in terms of education, should look out for all of us, not only government. And when you look at the distribution of schools today, private schools, let me give an example of Kampala. 27 public government-aided schools against 4,500 private education institutions in Kampala alone. Secondary education, private schools offer 77% of education, secondary education is managed by private. Now if you don't come up with ways of seeing how they can cope up, then you are sitting on the quality, you are compromising the quality of education in Uganda. And if the syllabus is not completed, definitely, as she has said, you know what is going to happen.
Yes.
People are going to start fumbling. Come this short term, that is going to start. And this will be now seen, reflected within the national performance. And you cannot, children cannot do exams, cannot learn when they are not fed well.
And again, we shall come back and blame the students.
The students, the brains are not growing, they are not settled, the diet is changing. Now, what do you expect? They are sickly, they are, how will they manage? So, the moment you don't cover up the syllabus, that's the beginning of everything. Okay. Fumbling here, there, and finally, you'll see no better results. Okay. And this impends also on the products of senior six who are entering the university. So, if universities in the other way are challenged, going back to what you talked about, digital, I saw Makerere striking, we don't want online learning. At that level, if you hear those voices, what about at the lower levels? That is something we need to think about.
Where you expect that these people are quite mature in the way of reasoning. But anyway, as someone who is invested in the education of Uganda, and of course, I'm sure that you hope to see that this education will no longer have the barriers that it faces. Don't you think that these academic challenges will cause an education deficit in the years to come? And how can we mitigate this?
The only way, the deficits, we are seeing gaps. We are glad that there is a commission, Education Review Commission. That was a product of the white paper, the Kajubi's report. That has expired, or expired in 2002, 2003, some years now back. The review is ongoing, still under Honorable Amanya Mushega, who was minister at the time when the Education Review Commission was handing in a report. We are requested by the ministry to forward in our ideas as far as this review is concerned. But we are looking at enabling policies, systems. How are the systems enabling the education sector to grow? Are they enabling the private sector to grow beyond the limits? Because what is at play now is not enabling the sector to grow broadly. The policies at play are geared towards oppressing. The majority of them are oppressing the private sector, and they are impending on the growth of the private sector. So we are looking forward to see that they are enabling policies and suggestions we are giving to the Commission in as far as the development of education and growth is concerned. Because of the gaps created, the deficiencies, they are creating a dichotomy within the sector. And you'll find now private is overwhelmed, and then government is also another take, which is really causing a big challenge in the education sector. So planning is the way to go. Reviewing the planning unit of the Ministry of Education is very fundamental in reviving the glory of education in Uganda. That's why our education institutions, even tertiary, the universities, they are moving down. They are no longer ranked as it was. So why? And everyone must look at this. But all this has happened at a time when the document we have been following has expired. It is going to give us a chance to give ideas, because we are actors on how we think education now should be managed come the 20, 30 years to come.
Okay, so finally, as we wrap up this conversation, and I'll start with you, Madam Aisha, any last remarks in regard to the early closure of schools and also mitigating in regard to the high cost of living?
Yes, thank you. I call upon, first of all, the government.
Including recommendations.
Including recommendations,
yes.
Yes. Yes, we call upon the government to please come up, usually very early, before it's late, to make pronouncements. You pronounce yourself. Even countries come up and pronounce, we are poor, we are bankrupt. It's no harm to do that. Then secondly, as we send back our children, our girls home, I would like to tell the parents that please take charge. Please take charge and please carry on. I would like to have these girls come back. Let us try to persevere. We bring these children back to school. Then in future, the future is bright. of Uganda. We are still growing. We have not lost hope. Please let us not lose hope. That is the worst in life, losing hope. Let us be hopeful that things will get better, and they have gotten better even before. They get worse, and then, yes. So you revamp.
There is hope at the end of the
there is
tunnel.
hope. There is hope, yes, please. And to the schools, please carry on. Let us not get our holidays too early. And then let us plan the holiday package very well. And let us try to psychologically prepare these children as we send them back home. Yes, we prepare them not to be aggressive. You know, we have a problem. We have had a problem in schools, the transfer of domestic violence to schools. There is that referred effect of domestic violence that was caused by COVID, and it has been affected in schools. So you find that problem in our schools. So as Lowell Girls School, we are carrying on. Yes, our girls are okay, and we think and we expect the parents to please bring them back, and as well as other schools.
Absolutely. Finally, to you, sir, any last remarks and recommendations in regard to the early closure of schools?
Yes, thank you. I just want to say parents must prepare themselves to take on their responsibilities as parents. We are challenged when students came back, pornography and all of that, immorality, because of overexposure and the time they have. Let them induct these students to be involved within fruitful ventures while in this holiday as we plan the way forward. I think for the schools it is ideal, as she has said, that we prepare these learners for this holiday. It is very important, and it's not because we are talking about early closure that every school must close. Those who can persevere, please, we call upon you to persevere. But the government, we want government to intervene and come up with a voice of hope that is going to give us direction. When the ministry keeps quiet, it creates desperation within the people they are leading. We need clarity, and we need to be fair to ourselves, and the facts must remain facts. If we adhere to this, then we shall move on. I think generally that's the situation, and that's what we can say. But we love Uganda, we love education, and we want to harmonize. We are not struggling with the government, but government should be attentive to we, the stakeholders. We have painfully invested in education, want to streamline education, and we want to see Uganda going back to where it was, and our schools moving to another level. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining me this morning on Sunrise at Sea. I truly appreciate, of course, discussing important matters such as education. Okay. Well, we also hope that when it comes to third term, school fees will not increase. I know Madam Aisha had already highlighted on it, and she said, of course, school fees will have to increase, but we hope that the situation will not come to that, and that there are measures put in place to mitigate the issue at hand. Absolutely. Well, a wise man once said, education is the passport to the future, for tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today. Let's learn to prepare. Otherwise, that wraps up the conversation that I had for you this morning on the Twitter chats. However, do stay tuned, because up next is our views. Keep watching Sunrise at Sea, and don't blink.